The support meta should finally see a bit of a shake-up for this patch with Nami on the nerf list. Ornn is being nerfed for top lane as well, so we've got a few staple solo carry champs from recent patches falling off for 26.7 as we provide you guys with an update on the best carries for every single role. SkillCapped just launched a completely free build site, and it does something no other build site does. Every site out there pulls win rates and pick rates from millions of games and spits out a build, but stats on their own can be misleading because they tell you nothing about why you're building something or when it's actually good. SkillCapped generates the same stats, and then our challenger team analyzes, curates, and explains the data. So let's say you want to try Renekton. Every other build site tells you to go Eclipse as your first item, which already puts you at a massive disadvantage right from the get-go. But SkillCapped gives you the full picture. OTPs know you should be going Shojin first. This gives you an actual good core of Shojin into Sterix, making you unkillable in the mid-game. Meanwhile, players who follow stats and go Eclipse just get munched up in fights. You'll also know exactly what runes to take and why in every matchup. Versus ranged, go press the attack. Versus Kayle, swap to greedier runes, since you don't need resolve. And tons of other build adaptations you'd never learn from just blindly following the stats alone. And that's not even the best part. We add in a bunch of bonus tips to every page in our Challenger skill insights. From must-know combos for your chosen champion, to hidden mechanics most players miss, like how most new Yi players have no idea that Q does 75% bonus damage to isolated targets. That's why the OTPs don't always Q to gap close on ganks, but instead flash first on top of their opponent, forcing them off the wave. Then you hit them with the isolated Q that destroys their HP. No matter the champion, you're guaranteed to learn something new, and if you don't feel like reading, just hit quick build, and you get the cleanest cheat sheet out there for while you're in game, focusing on actually playing. Check it out at skillcapped.com/LOL/guides, link in the description below. So a new addition to the solo carry for top lane in 26.7 is coming off some huge buffs from last patch, as we've got Olaf joining the list. The Olaf buffs originally were looking pretty solid, but then Riot decided to hotfix buff him even more after the patch went out, providing his Q with bonus damage, which has really pushed him into top tier territory. 10 extra damage on Q is actually so massive for early all-in power because you're likely able to get off at least 3 Qs when you're chasing an enemy down and trying to all-in them, so 30 bonus damage towards Olaf's early kill power is insane. For the meta build on Olaf, you rush Stridebreaker into Experimental Hexplate, and this core provides Olaf with incredible sticking power on completion. Olaf's only weakness is actually being able to stick onto his targets, so the slow from Stride and movement speed boost from Hexplate synergizes so well with his kit. Analytically, Kayle has been one of Olaf's worst matches in recent patches, and it's one of his more common matchups in meta as well, so she's a good ban to consider. The best fighter top lane champ that you can play right now, who we've got up in the OP tier on the tier list, is Garen. So Garen was just buffed a few patches ago, and he's seen a big surge in strength. The fact Singed and Ornn are nerfed for this patch just puts even higher priority on Garen as well, because we had Singed and Ornn up in the OP tier with Garen last patch. Much like Olaf, the only bad matchup that Garen has in meta is against Kayle. Champs like Garen and Olaf who lack gap closers have a more difficult time playing into Kayle because of all of her kiting potential, and it's even worse right now due to the fact that Kayle is a top tier champ in meta. Something that's really nice about Garen and makes him so consistent is that his core build doesn't change at all from game to game. You're always going Stridebreaker into Phantom Dancer, so you never have to waste any brain power during the early to mid game thinking about optimal buys. Third item is where the options start to kick in though, as you can take Mortal Reminder against healing comps, Spear of Shojin into bruisers or tanks, and Infinity Edge against a very squishy enemy comp. One of the best pure carry top lane champions that you can play for 26.7 is Kayle. So Kayle is flat out phenomenal for this season because you get to your level 16 way faster and can impact the game at a higher level because of that. The top lane quest has really opened things up for a bunch of viable summoner spells on Kayle, as she's great with Ghost, Ignite, and even Exhaust. Ghost is really good in a lane like Garen or Olaf, where you just need to keep your distance and kite them around. Ignite is great if you are more confident in your ability to solo kill early on in lane, and then Exhaust works really well if you're into a champ who has a bunch of mobility like Mbessa or Riven, where if they can dive on you, then the Exhaust can help you nullify their initial burst and kite back. Something a lot of Kayle players are messing up on right now is their skill order, as Q max is still winning way more than E max despite the recent Q nerf. A lot of Kayle players just assumed that after the Q nerf, E max would be superior, but we're not seeing that be the case at all, with Q max continuing to win about 3% more than E max. Kayle wins a ton against some of the most played meta top lane champs like Garen, Set, and Darius, so you can feel pretty comfortable with blind picking Kayle. The only more difficult matchup you'll want to try and avoid is Aurelia, as her mobility and early game all-in threat is a big issue for Kayle to have to deal with. The best core build for Kayle revolves around a Nashor's Tooth Rush into Dusk and Dawn 2nd and Rabadon's 3rd, while Press the Attack is the keystone rune. Back in the top 3 for 26.7 after being very minimally impacted by his 26.6 nerf is Shen. Shen only lost about 1% win rate from the nerf, so considering he was heavily overperforming up above a 53% 93% win rate prior to the change, he still remains in a super powerful spot after the nerf. What's so great about Shen jungle is that just by locking him in, you basically provide your laners with a man-up advantage at all times when you get level 6. The fact that you can instantly port into a fight with your R means your laners get to play so much more aggressive and push their early game leads, so the snowball potential you get from just locking in Shen is incredible. You really just need to focus on which lane is ahead the most and then make sure you allow them to completely take over the game. For example, if your top laner is 0-4 and they are getting ganked while your bot lane is 4-0 and hard winning, don't waste an R to try and save your useless top laner. The worst case scenario is you use R for top, you die as well, and then you don't have your R to help your winning bot 1 minute later when they get ganked. On top of Shen's map impact being unmatched, he has a lot of really good matchups in meta, as we are seeing way fewer AP junglers in meta and a lot more AD auto-reliant picks. Shen performs great into Shyvana, Viego, Briar, Master Yi, and Vi because his W can block so much of their damage in a skirmish if used at the correct time. The only more common matchup in meta that you may want to consider banning when picking Shen is Lilia, as Shen W is completely useless in the matchup. Protoplasm Harness into Unending Despair is such a cheap and powerful core build for Shen, so it makes him really consistent because even if you get invaded and fall behind a bit, you're still likely to hit your core build before the enemy jungler. Back in the top 3 for jungle for another patch, as one of the most consistently powerful junglers for a while now is Briar. If you're anywhere ranked Emerald or below, then Briar should be someone you highly consider right now. Shen works a bit better for the higher elos, so if you're Emerald or above, then siding with him is great, and if not, then look into Briar. The reason Briar works so well for the lower ranks is because she's a very stat-checky champion. Majority of your damage with Briar is guaranteed, so if you end up getting ahead, you'll just beat anyone you run into without any way for them to fight back. The meta build for Briar works incredible for solo queue because it gives her a great mix of damage and durability. You rush Blade of the Ruined King into Black Cleaver 2nd and Death Stance 3rd for the core, while Press the Attack is the Keystone rune. The only matchup in meta that you have to worry about right now is Shen, as Briar players have only been winning around 47% of the time in the matchup. Shen's W hard counters Briar's ability to skirmish because if she tries to jump in on Shen, then he just activates W and blocks the vast majority of her damage. It's really ironic how the jungle top 3 is aligned right now because all 3 champs have top percentile level 6 gank power. Nocturne rounds out the top 3 for this patch as he was just recently buffed and has moved past many junglers in priority because of the changes. These junglers like Shen and Nocturne are so consistently impactful for solo queue because you have a very clear and defined power point to play around. Is your R available? Okay, great. Then you should be looking to fight. Is your R down? Well, then try to ping your team to play safer, ping your R cooldown, and farm up until it's available again. Being able to farm your jungle as efficiently as possible is extremely important to unlocking the potential of not just Nocturne, but any jungler you play. That's why we enlist the help of world record holding junglers to teach you the fastest clears possible for your chosen champion before they ever go viral. We've just uploaded new optimal clears for Nocturne, Briar, and Shen, and have almost every single meta jungler's Season 16 clear updated, so check them all out today using the link in the description or pinned comment below. The optimal build for Nocturne consists of a Hexblade Rush into Stridebreaker 2nd, and then Conqueror is the Keystone rune. Since Nocturne is a champ who wants to be able to freely dive backline carries without any disruption, using your ban on a meta peel support like Lulu or Melio is good value. Back in the top 3 for mid lane with the recent nerfs barely affecting her power is Ahri. Ahri continues to be one of the best blind pick mids for solo queue as you have very few hard losing matchups. The one matchup you may want to consider banning right now is Mel, as she's seeing more play lately and her W can do a good job at limiting your catch power. Level 6 is your big spike with Ahri, as her skirmish power with R is incredible. You really want to try and keep mid wave pushed and then rotate to try and make plays with your jungler. If you can be the first one moving to skirmishes that break out, then you're going to find success on Ahri, as she can close so much distance with her R and participate in fights that few other mids can get to as quickly. So that your R drops to as low of a cooldown as possible, you rush Malignance while taking Ultimate Hunter and Transcendence in runes. We're actually seeing a new core emerge on Ahri, with Rocket Belt gaining in popularity as her second item. Rocket Belt is currently winning about 3% more than Shadow Flame, so it's definitely an adaptation worth trying for 26.7. Back in the top 3 for mid for a second patch in a row, as the best mage you can play is Xerath. We've seen so many mages battered down with nerfs this season, as picks like Orianna, Ryze, Syndra, Veigar, and Talia have all received nerfs since Season 16, so it's opened things up for Xerath to really thrive as the top tier solo queue mage. What makes Xerath so strong for solo queue is his ability to perma-clear waves and impact the game from such a long range. Once you get a couple of items on Xerath, his R becomes a really broken tool because you can use it to poke out the enemy priority target before a key objective is spawning and give your team such a massive edge up. You can get such an influx of gold from taking down turrets in Season 16, and because Xerath has a really easy time keeping his towers alive, it helps a ton to stunt the enemy team from hitting their item spikes. Just being able to keep mid tower alive for as long as possible is so valuable for solo queue because the map opens up so much with mid tower down, but Xerath is the best champ at not allowing for that to happen. There are just a few champions you'll want to try and avoid playing into when picking Xerath, and they include include Fizz, Katarina, and Akali. These champs with incredible mobility and burst threat are more difficult for Xerath to deal with, so banning out one of them is a good idea. The standard core build for Xerath revolves around Illuden's Rush into Shadowflame's second and Rabadon's third, while First Strike is the Keystone rune. So, just buffed last patch and making an appearance in the top 3 for 26.7 is going to be Lissandra. Lissandra saw her Q cooldown reduced by 1 second in exchange for less scaling armor, which has made her especially good in AP assassin matchups. Katarina, Akali, and Fizz are 3 champs that Lissandra absolutely thrives against right now, which is ironic because those are the exact 3 champs that Xerath hates the most. Liss also sees a ton of success playing into Yasuo and Yone, so there's a lot of value to having her as a champ you can pull out right now. The constant poke threat from Q in lane is so annoying for the enemy to deal with and allows you to acquire perma priority in most matchups. As you reach mid to late game team fights as Lissandra, she's such a hard counter to those melee dive champs, as her point and click lockdown with R makes it impossible for enemy melees to dive in without getting CC'd. The only matchups Liss struggles against more so are longer range mages, so Victor, Xerath, and Lux are 3 champs that are good ban options for Lissandra. For Lissandra's build, you want to rush Malignance into Shadowflame second and Zanya's third in the majority of your games. You can swap around the order in which you purchase Zanya's and Shadowflame if you think there's a lot of value to having the Zanya stasis earlier on against the enemy comp. Heading down to the bot lane now, kicking off the top 3 for ADC is going to be Ashe. Ashe is such a great blind pick ADC for solo queue because she doesn't have any matchups that are hard losing. Most ADCs have a matchup where they only win 47% of the time against or lower, but Ashe's worst analytical matchup is at 49%. Ashe has a really interesting new build going around that does not involve Kraken Slayer or Yuntal. Instead, we are seeing more play from Stormrazor over the past patch, and it's performing extremely well. Stormrazor as a rush is winning about 2% more than Kraken and Yuntal, so if you're looking for something new and underrated to play for 26.7, then Stormrazor Ashe is the pick. It's actually kind of surprising Stormrazor hasn't been meta on Ashe at all this season until now, because the movement speed proc helps with her kiting power immensely. The slow from your passive plus the bonus movement speed from Stormrazor allows you to easily kite around melee champs in skirmishes. Considering the only big weakness to Ashe is the fact that she lacks a gap closer and hates playing into heavy dive, Stormrazor does a great job at alleviating that weakness. It's still a good idea to prioritize your ban towards a meta champ with a heavy dive, so Nocturne or Zed are 2 good options right now. Worth noting as well for Ashe's rune page is that you should be taking Cashback instead of Biscuits. Cashback wins over 2% more than Biscuits on Ashe over a very large sample size, so it's clear that it's just the more consistent rune choice. In ADC, we've been really high on for the past few patches, who's finally starting to gain more traction in solo queue is Senna. Senna ADC has been in a great spot for a few patches now, and it's because of a new build that has popped up. You go Static Shiv into Dusk and Dawn as your core build, and take Press the Attack for the Keystone so that your upfront burst potential is really strong. A huge perk to the build as well is that you get a ton of health from Dusk and Dawn and Black Cleaver, so you're deceptively tanky while still being able to output really good damage. You also instantly consume passive procs when you Q an opponent when you have Dusk and Dawn completed, so you have the potential to gain a ton more passive stacks throughout the game with this build. The only bigger weakness to Senna is that she's quite squishy early on in the game, as her base health is lower than many other ADCs. Senna's base health sits at 530, while picks like Ashe and Jinx are up over 600. For this reason, you're more susceptible to all-in support, so banning out a meta engage support is a good idea when locking Senna, and Nautilus or Leona are the 2 most played in meta right now. And then continuing to stick in the top 3 for ADC as one of the most consistently powerful champs for this season is Jinx. Having Jinx in your champ pool for ADC has served you really well over the past year or so because she rarely ever falls into a weak state. Jinx is one of the best ADCs in the game to pick if you don't know who your support is playing, as she can pair up extremely well with all archetypes of supports. Jinx on a couple of items has some of the best teamfight strength for any ADC in the game, and the new Season 16 quest just allows her to hit those item spikes earlier on and will be able to influence the majority of games. The meta build for Jinx right now consists of Hex Optics Rush into Phantom Dancer second and Infinity Edge third. If you're someone who's still building Kraken or Yuntal on Jinx, then definitely make the swap over to Hex Optics because the item heavily outperforms everything else. The only major vulnerability that Jinx has is the fact that she lacks a gap closer, so kiting out heavy dive comps can be more difficult, and for that reason, using your ban on a meta diver like Nocturne or Zed is a good idea. So now that Nami has finally been nerfed, it's going to bring indirect rise to an enchanter who's been incredible all season, being Sona. Sona has been excelling in solo queue this season as a result of the item changes, as her 2-item core gives her such a massive power spike. Most other supports in the game don't have insane power spikes with items, but when you reach 2 items on Sona, you really feel it, as her ability to constantly output heals and skirmishes is amazing. The fact that you have the ability to find picks and make plays happen on your own is also a big perk to playing Sona over other enchanters. The majority of enchanters have really good peel power, but Sona has the ability to be the aggressor as well, so it allows you to carry games more consistently. It's really just early on in lane where Sona is going to be more vulnerable, as you are very squishy early on, so banning a meta engage support like Nautilus or Leona is good value. In matchups where the enemy has a more aggressive duo, you can also look to take Bone Plating and Runes runes instead of conditioning. Most Sona players just autopilot rune conditioning with Revitalize every game for secondary runes, but bone plating can work really well into melee engaged supports. One of the best melee supports for Season 16, who's such a reliable pick for solo queue, is Braum. Having Braum in your champion pool for support is absolutely incredible because he synergizes so well with what's being picked in meta. We are seeing so many melee fighter champs being played in top and jungle for this season, and Braum thrives with them because they want to be diving in, and Braum is one of the best supports at following up on dive and enabling his fed fighter champs to succeed in skirmishes. The only major downside to Braum is that he can have a tougher time early on in lane if going up against a double-ranged bot lane duo. For this reason, using your ban on Senna is good value, as it's a matchup that Braum has had an overly negative win rate against for a while now. The optimal build for Braum has you rushing Bandle Pipes into Locket second, and Solstice Slay is the item upgrade. Bandle Pipes addition to Season 16 is another big reason to why Braum is so strong, as the item synergizes incredibly well with Braum's kit, as more attack speed just means faster passive procs and a more reliable skirmish. The third support on the list to round things out for 26.7 is going to be Melio. So with Nami nerfed, Melio becomes a higher priority pick, as he had been performing at a very similar level to Nami in previous patches. Melio is really good right now for similar reasons to why we have Braum in the top 3, and to why we also like Janna right now, as his Q does an incredible job at disrupting melee champs in skirmishes. It's a super melee fighter heavy meta in top and jungle right now, so Melio can work great in tandem with them and to counter them. With Ashe being a really strong ADC in meta right now, the Melio-Ashe duo has been winning upwards of 55% in recent patches, so if your ADC wants to play Ashe, then locking in Melio is a no-brainer. The only meta ADC Melio doesn't really like playing with as much is Kai'Sa, because Kai'Sa in general is just much worse with enchanters who can't help to proc her passive faster. The fact Melio W provides his ADC with bonus range just makes him such a devastating pick with Jinx, Kate, or Ashe, because those 3 ADCs already have longer ranges, and enhancing the range even further adds for some nasty lane potential. This is another reason why Melio fits in really well at the moment, because those 3 ADCs whom Melio synergizes the best with are all being picked at high rates in meta. The core build for Melio revolves around an Echoes of Helia rush into Ardent or Moonstone second, while Dreammaker is the item upgrade. Another huge perk to Melio is that he's one of the few enchanters that doesn't hard lose to melee engaged supports, as his Q and R can do a great job at countering the engage potential of them. It's really just instant catch power that you have a harder time countering, so using your ban on Blitzcrank is a good idea. Alright guys, one last thing, our rank up guarantee is insane. It's like signing up for the gym and getting a refund if you don't get ripped. That's how confident we are in SkillCapped. We obsess over making the best guides with top players, rigorous testing, and top tier video editing to make your climb easy. If you're ready to level up, visit SkillCapped.com and see the difference. So there you have it everyone, those are 3 of the best champions for every single role as we head into 26.7. Thank you all so much for watching, we'll see you in the next one.